and welcome to AA Beyond Belief. This is your humble host, John, and I have a guest today who I'm really excited about learning more about. His name is Seth Perry, and believe it or not, he told me in full open disclosure that he is a clergy person. However, he found our podcast, he knows what we're about, and he was really interested in talking about what he does and how, in his belief, let me just put it in his words. This is what he wrote in his email to me, and I just found this sentiment something I agree with. He said that gone are the days of rigid spiritual solutions to recovery. I have to be prepared to work alongside anyone who seeks my help, and that includes atheists and agnostics. And I concur with that. I've recently come to the conclusion, too, that as an atheist, I need to be prepared to use the language of people who have a belief and want to use that belief system in their recovery as well. So I think we're on the same page, Seth, and I'm really looking forward to learning more about you. Welcome to AA Beyond Belief.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, what I like to do here is let a story unfold, and we'll just have a conversation from that. Your story is interesting already. I know from what little you've told me in your email. So I'm anxious to hear about how you got to where you are today. So I'm just going to turn it over to you to kind of go into that.
Well, thank you. And thanks for having me on. So I think that where it all started for me was at home in the suburbs of Vancouver in Canada, in British Columbia, where I grew up. And on the outside, our family looked pretty happy. We were a family of five, all boys, and we went to church on Sunday, and we played sports. Everyone played soccer and baseball. There was no drinking. My parents didn't drink at all. There was no real problem drinkers in the cell, specifically that group of five, but there were outside of that. It seemed to skip a generation in my family.
Yeah. Okay.
So I had a grandparent, and actually my mom's brother had some problems drinking, and so we were really expected to be like our parents. And pretty early on, it turned out that my middle brother wasn't. That he was more like the alcoholics in the family. Mm-hmm. This caused some panic, and I'm the youngest, and coming up underneath that, like, I saw him and I said, that looks cool. He was rebellious, he was drinking, and so that became my outlet in my teen years. And so that's what I really focused on. That was my escape. That was how I became funny. That was how I became the center of attention, was drinking at that age. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I got into theater, to drama. I wanted to be a stand-up comedian. I wanted to be a filmmaker.
Yeah, you got a degree in fine arts, didn't you?
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah. So that was my goal, and it did take me a good 7 years to finish my undergraduate, like a good alcoholic, I guess would, right? Mm-hmm. I had a lot of problems. I was in and out of the hospital in my late teens and early 20s. I struggled to get good grades because of my drinking. And spiritually speaking, I just stopped going to church with the family. Okay. There's kind of like a big split, and I would say that there was a theological crisis in the family when my brother came out of the closet too. My oldest brother. So we were like, our church doesn't support and love our brother, so the family just sort of scattered and had we all stepped away from the church in different ways.
Okay, interesting.
Mm-hmm. And I did so kind of bitterly, I would say, and just went into drinking. Right. And I identified as an atheist for many years.
Oh, how about that? Okay.
Mm-hmm. And I worked in nightclubs, and then soon I was doing stand-up in my senior year of university.
That
Uh,
always interests me. You know, you would now
yeah,
be the third stand-up comedian that I've had on the podcast.
absolutely.
So that's pretty cool. So
Yeah.
I always love hearing the stories of stand-up comedians and what they go through, and it's quite. We might have you back sometime to go into that in more detail. But yeah, so you did that.
Yeah. And that's when things really went on a huge upswing career wise, but alcohol wise, things intensified.
Yeah,
And I started having more and more problems through my 20s and into my late 20s, and had crisis after crisis, burned my professional bridges, showed up to auditions hungover or incredibly drunk,
yeah.
and really burned every possible bridge that I could have professionally, and was kind of feeling like I couldn't get booked at
Yeah.
age 29.
Yeah.
And so luckily my family had said, yeah, we'll help you out if you are willing. And I was 6 months estranged from the family. They gave this boundary where it said, come around when you want help.
Oh,
And so they got me involved in the program then at age 29.
oh,
And
okay.
and that's when it stuck. I tried a lot on my own,
Mm-hmm.
but that's when it stuck for me, really.
Similar
And
story to mine. I kind of started off early in life. So I was
mhm,
25 when I had my last drink, and so I made it to my first AA meeting just before my 26th birthday.
mhm.
Been sober since then.
It was nice being that young. That was almost 11 years ago, and being
Mm-hmm.
that young, and knowing that I was getting a second chance, and also to live in a community. Like I moved out of the downtown core of Vancouver and I moved to Vancouver Island, which was
Oh,
nice, and it was away. It was there was a geographical separation of some water, and I couldn't just go back to my old friends, and completely. I stayed there for 7.5 years,
mm-hmm.
and kind of rebuilt my life at that point.
Okay.
And what that looked like for me was, I mean, I still identified as an atheist pretty early on, and then the interesting thing about all this was, and this was something that I run into a lot in 12-step groups and circles, is there seems to be like a fundamentalist sect
Yes,
of,
yes.
and I'm sure you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, they're yeah, I tell people it's like they're not really religious people, but they're religious about AA itself, or they're religious about whatever their
Yeah.
dogmatic recovery program is. They
Hmm.
think that what their recovery program is should be everybody's recovery program to the letter.
Absolutely. So I mean, I'm the child of two intellectuals. My dad is a PhD in linguistics, and my mom has a master's in library science, and they're very academic, and I was raised to read and to be critical and to think critically and think for
Mm-hmm.
myself. So when it came to a lot of blind faith and topics in the fundamentalist circles that I'm talking about, where it was just no debate or discussion or inquiry, red flags went up for me, really.
Interesting.
Hmm. And so some people were blindly following the big book and also inviting me to other fundamentalist Christian organizations, and I didn't identify with that
Oh,
either, right?
interesting. Yeah. So I was the one who followed the big book. I was so I didn't grow up in a religion,
Hmm.
but and I knew nothing about it. I mean, I was almost embarrassed how little I knew about religion. I actually had to take a class to know anything about the Bible at all. And I'm glad I took it because it was really very interesting to learn the history behind how it all came together. But yeah, but when I got into AA and I saw all the religious stuff going on and the big book, I was just so desperate. I just did whatever they told me to do. And what I did, Seth, is I found myself, I didn't realize this at the time, but what I was doing is I was just conforming to whatever the norm was in that group.
Hmm.
Whatever I thought they were expecting me to do,
Yeah.
I thought I had to do. So that's what I did.
Yeah. in early recovery, I was more vulnerable or
Yeah,
susceptible to,
exactly. We
yeah.
are.
So I did a lot of that too. I would be like, okay, I'm just gonna be what I thought, that suggestion people say, be open-minded to
Right, right.
new
Yeah, but it's
possibilities.
right.
Yeah,
The open
and
mind only goes one way, though, their way. But that's
their
okay.
way. Yeah. So, I ended up in a in a church that I really didn't see a lot of my values and beliefs reflected in
Hmm.
their beliefs. And I get there and I'm like, there's a ton of people here from the rooms, right?
Oh, how about that?
And I said, this is just, a lot of people are just treating this as an extension of the program. And I didn't,
Interesting.
I was a little bit trepidatious. And so
Yeah.
after a few months, I left and ended up going back to the faith of my youth, which is more of a humanist, intellectual and academic look on faith. And
Okay.
that's where I've settled, and I ended up going to theological seminary for 5 years to study this, with the intention of working in institutional chaplaincy, and a little bit of, I would also have to do a little bit of parish ministry, but I like the idea of working in institutions, in places where you'll get broad beliefs and you'll be able to work with people that are stuck in an institution, and not be with them with the intention of converting them, but more to facilitate whatever's happening for them. Yeah.
So, what are you finding when you do? So you were working with people as a chaplain in a treatment center. Are you still doing that, by the way?
So I did that for about 2 years,
Okay.
and in two different settings, and moved on to parish ministry, which
Okay.
I'm doing now for a period of time. But I
Oh.
also, right now, I'm also assisting in local correctional institutions
Oh.
on a part-time basis. We partner with individuals and bring them into our congregation. We also go into the institutions as well. So that's what I'm doing specifically right now. But then with my time with the treatment centers, those two combined years, where I would do fifth steps with individuals,
Mm-hmm.
and that was rewarding and fun, because anyone could walk into that room. I could prepare anyone for that process, and they could do that. Some of them as agnostic atheists,
Sure.
and that was excellent, an excellent opportunity. The other uh, context that I worked in for a period of time was in a indigenous context,
Oh yeah.
with mainly indigenous individuals
Mm-hmm.
with a completely different system of beliefs,
Yep.
where many of them were also uh, not really knowing anything about what they wanted out of belief, because
You
they'd grown
know,
up in, yeah.
I talked to someone who was he's actually he was the chair of the General Service Board of, I can't remember what it is now, but Native Americans and AA.
Hmm.
And I wanted to have him on the podcast because I was just interested in his the way that his community finds recovery and how
Hmm.
they deal with spirituality. But
Hmm.
I explained to him that my podcast was that it was the niche was for atheists and agnostics in AA.
Yeah.
And he was reluctant to come on because he said, well, we don't have anything in common with atheists because spirituality is really important to us. But what he told me was the problem that he has with AA or getting his people to go to AA meetings is they see it as a white man's program.
Absolutely.
That was
Yes.
the issue he had with it. And I wish I could have talked to him about it. I just found that I would love to have learned more about that, but he just didn't want to do it. So
Hmm. It was
is
a
that
yeah, it was, in many ways, I was a fish out of water for my first few weeks there, because I had to continually be explained, like, there's a different way of talking, there's
mm-hmm.
there are different values at play, and the cultural, spiritual component is enmeshed for them. It is both culture and religion.
Yeah. Yeah.
and culture, religion, and language too. And so I had the opportunity of going into the sweats with them, to doing numerous ceremonies. One of the staff members there died, and they said, "We need you to officiate this funeral, and the elder will do his part as the family for this individual come in." And like all these very different, varied practices. And then we had staff members and clients identifying as atheist agnostic within this whole thing, because they took a harm reduction approach at times. And they also would get to the point with an individual where if they were saying, yeah, no to this God thing, okay,
You're
no
right.
to this God, then we would have to find them alternative literature. We'd have
Right.
to, which in other settings, that was a no-go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this whole topic of spirituality is so interesting. So now I've spoken with hundreds of agnostics and atheists in AA over the last 5 years, literally hundreds of them. And I will tell you that, and this is no surprise to me from what I now know, but the way that every single one of them describes their recovery is different. And the view of spirituality among even atheists varies from one end to the other. So you have some who are absolutely opposed to it, hate it, are violently, militantly attack it. They just don't like it, right? And then
Mhm.
you have others who actually pray. They don't believe
Mhm.
there's any God they're praying to, but they do pray because it brings them peace. It helps them. Then they have most of them are probably somewhere in the middle where they kind of just any spiritual practice or spiritual language and so forth, they're very comfortable with and are okay with it. They just don't identify any of it with a God, a deity. That's basically how
Mhm.
it is. But
Mhm.
there's a bit of a debate. The real militant types really don't like the ones who are okay with it. I don't know why. I wish they could just kind of let everybody do their own thing. Because what I've what I've come to believe, where I stand on the whole thing, is it's just language. It's just how you're going to describe the experience.
Mhm. Oh, definitely. I think that my role and the way that I approach anyone, and I mean, I did a solid clinical training in a hospital in the Seattle area where it was necessary for me to do that to get my master's degree, and that was in such a varied setting, and I had to have the appropriate language walking into a room. So if a code blue happens, who knows who's what family are going to be in the family room when
Yeah.
and to see a chaplain show up, and there could be family members with all sorts of different beliefs, but the way that I spoke had to be one of open facilitation to,
Mm-hmm.
really speak calmly, to listen, and to be a calming presence first and foremost. I can be grounded in my own spirituality, but it's not a moment to begin evangelizing like
Right.
that. That's the key, really. Yeah.
Right. You got to let
Mhm.
people find their own way. I recently took a class. I need to take the test here pretty soon, but it was a class to become a certified peer support specialist. So
Mhm.
this is someone who has life experience with addiction
Yeah.
and has been in recovery, and then works as kind of a adjunct type person with a therapist or whatever in a treatment facility, but just to help them identify their own recovery goals and then the barriers to those. And the whole key to recovery is, as you were describing with your work with the indigenous people, is that it's going to really have to be tailored to whatever that person needs. And I just, so it could be harm reduction,
Mhm.
for certain addictions,
Yeah.
that it makes sense. It could be different types of programs. It could be where spirituality is very important to them and where spirituality is not important to them. So
Mhm.
it's just a matter of helping people find that.
Absolutely. And when you were introducing me and you said, what I said in my email about, gone are the days of rigid solutions for this type of thing. Absolutely. And I think in my early recovery, I was maybe taken under the wing of some people that might have had a little bit more zeal, and really got me into the fundamentals and basics and the black and white thinking. And I really had in my time, I took a job as a support worker at a treatment center when I was 3 years clean, and when I was starting my role in seminary and getting my master's degree. And people would always give me that feedback and just say, Seth, it's different people have different needs. Some people are going to need a stern approach. Some people are going to need you to be a little bit more delicate, and you're going to have to listen to people. And that's sometimes when I see individuals in the rooms be very black and white about, these are the steps. These are the basics of the steps. This is how it was done back
Right.
originally. We always going back to the origin, but there's probably about 7 or 8,
Right.
views on what it was done originally. Right.
Yeah.
So I don't ever want to be that person. That's
Right.
not who I am. So I work with sponsees. I don't have any requirements for them to do anything spiritually. I don't get to a point where I say, on your knees, you got to do it this way and you got to say this. I don't think so. It is an exploration process for people to really discover how, for them personally, with their own view of the world, the values and beliefs and the ethics that they see the world through, to apply that to not picking up a drink today. Yeah.
So part of this class that I took, it's fresh in my mind because it was just like last week or the week before. But one of the chapters that we went over was spirituality, and as it being an important component of recovery. And they told us during class that if anything comes up that traumatizes you, please raise your hand. So I raised my hand. I said, I tell you, I'm gonna have trouble with this. and I told them why, because I really was afraid that they were going to define spirituality for me, but they didn't. And it was okay. And I was able to once again just interpret what they were saying in my own way. But I'm curious, how do you see spirituality for yourself, and how do you see where it fits in with recovery overall? Tough question, I know.
Well, what I really build my foundation on is something called a hermeneutic, and then theologically that would be a lens that I see the world through. So I was raised in a social justice minded church. I was raised among we had Vietnamese refugees living in our house for a period of time, and my parents said, this is an ethical thing to do. This is why. There's people in need. They're refugees. Our church has rehomed these people, and they called my mother mom, and it was just, those were the things that I was shown were ethical and good, and that's how I was exposed to the good that can be done in this world.
Okay.
So it comes back to that foundational understanding that I had as a child, and it built all the way through my teen years with various social issues. We would always look at world politics, and we would observe things and talk about ethics as I experienced the world, up to that point where my family took a stand with my brother's sexuality, where we had some major disagreements with the church and what they were believing, and then I realized that I can look at what has been written by humans, and I can understand it in a historical context, and I can apply that to the world that's out there. So spiritually, every week, I'm writing 1,500 words for the church that
Mm-hmm.
I'm employed for,
Mm-hmm.
and it is an application of what I have studied, what I've learned, and I am in continual study,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I have to have my eyes open to the world, interpreting where I believe God is working in the
Mm-hmm.
immediate context.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about it's not about prophecy.
Right.
It's not about chastising. It's not about imposing my thoughts on morality on others, which some faiths do, right?
Right.
It's a facilitation of uh, an exploration of morality, ethics that's happening in a community of people, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So dialogue is a huge part of it. That's why I said there's kind of like a humanist
Sure.
component to my faith, right?
Yeah.
And full disclosure, like I'm a Lutheran, and Martin Luther is a huge humanist. And I draw from modern philosophy a lot. Aristotle is someone that I would draw from. Now, a Pentecostal might say, well, that's complete heresy,
I was
right?
wondering. I was kind of guessing to myself. I said, okay, he's either an Episcopalian or a Unitarian.
Yeah. So really, really close, very close.
Okay. Okay.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I think that the whole thing too with spirituality is the way I see it. It's for me, it's kind of like kind of connecting with my emotions, and there's a real need there was a real need for me, and I think for a lot of people in recovery, to kind of rewire the way that they think and the way that they view their relationship with other people. And sometimes that kind of emotional feeling and stuff that you have to kind of get in touch with is really difficult to articulate, you know? And I think that that's where the spiritual language does kind of come in handy, because it helps people get in touch with something that they don't really have to define to anybody, but you can encompass it as part of a spiritual practice. I mean, I still do things. I'm a pretty strict atheist, as far as I'm pretty sure that God doesn't exist, but I'm one of those who have times when that they in AA they have the Serenity Prayer,
Hmm.
and I still find that amazingly comforting and useful, and
Hmm.
it's still something that I rely on to this day. I don't
Hmm.
have to believe that there's a God that's listening and answering or doing anything, but I still recite that prayer because it's important to me. It's something that it brings me back centered.
Hmm. Yeah. There is a community aspect to the prayer. I think
Mm-hmm.
people hold hands. It is not put a very particularly. It's not really a theistic.
No, it's not. It's
You
not.
know.
It's not like the Lord's Prayer. A lot of meetings close with the Lord's Prayer, which
Yeah.
does turn people off, actually. But
Yeah. Oh, definitely. It's an ongoing debate that I
yeah,
witness, and
yeah,
I came from a very a secular culture. British Columbia is quite a secular place, especially Vancouver and Vancouver Island. And there's zero use of the Lord's Prayer. I didn't know it
yeah.
existed in AA for quite some time. Yeah.
I know. I wish I could remember the name of the comedian that I spoke with, that because he was from Vancouver,
Oh, okay.
and he was telling me about in Vancouver they started the safe injection sites in
Mm.
Vancouver,
Oh, yeah.
and he moved to Toronto, and they were just starting them up in Toronto, um, and they're very successful. They do help people. They've been able to prove that they've reduced the number of drug overdoses
Hmm.
for people who go to those. But I guess in some areas it's still kind of controversial. But
Yeah. Hmm.
very interesting to hear his view. And I didn't know anything about Vancouver and what it's like there, but he grew up in the streets of Vancouver. He had a hard life, prison and all kinds of stuff. But yeah, he was really in the hardcore areas of Vancouver, which I guess can be kind of rough.
Oh, definitely. Absolutely.
So,
Uh, yeah, definitely. When you get out to meetings in Vancouver, there you can see there's sometimes a division. People who were in the Lower East Side,
Hmm.
who went through that, and then everyone else really
Yeah.
too. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Hmm.
So tell me this.
Sure.
I'm interested in your YouTube channel because
Yeah.
I'm really interested in getting connected with the the recovery community on YouTube. It's
Yes,
huge.
it is
And
huge.
I love it because it's huge and it's varied.
Hmm.
And I just want to get I want to get to connect with people in it, but I just have not gotten to that point yet. I started
Hmm.
another podcast that was going to be more of a YouTube centered type of a thing, but
Hmm.
I found it really difficult to do the two podcasts. So that's
Hmm.
why I'm going to change the name of this one and make
Yeah,
it, because I want to have that connection with other YouTubers. And YouTube is a visual thing.
for sure.
Not, yeah. So if I'm going to meet up with other people in recovery on YouTube, I want to be at see, you know.
Hmm.
So tell me how you got involved with your YouTube channel, why you got involved with it, what has your experience been with it, where do you want to see it go? I'm just really interested in your take on that. And
Yeah.
you're very good with your videos, by the way. I just, as a technical guy, I have to say, very good.
Thank you. Yeah. So yeah, 4 years at Simon Fraser University Film School has
Yeah,
paid off.
there you go.
So what I would say is, I kept kicking around this idea on, how am I going to have, my presence, what I provide, insight. How am I going to have that on, on the internet through a visual medium? And I kept thinking about starting a YouTube channel.
Hmm.
And so I thought, what's appropriate? And I said, it needs to just be completely unaffiliated with anything that I
Smart.
am, affiliated with. I'm
See, that's what I'm
affiliated,
going to do. I'm going to de-affiliate.
de-affiliate. Yeah.
I'm
So
not really affiliated, but with the name, it's like, you know. Anyway, I'm sorry for interrupting you.
oh, don't worry about it. I just thought, I thought about it long and hard. And I said, well, the best way is to just have it under my name and for it to be something
Yeah.
simple: addiction, recovery, spirituality. And so my goal is to take one broad topic, a week, that I could talk about, speak on it for about a minute, and then spend the rest of the video evaluating
That
my,
is so amazing. You
yeah.
evaluate your own stuff.
Definitely. I looked at some formats, of other channels, and sort of started looking at, there were some channels that would evaluate their own content.
Uh-huh.
And there also was, a very popular channel called Dr. Grande, a psychologist, and he takes on just one specific topic a week, and it's a direct address. And I said,
Uh-huh.
I think I could do something similar to that, and I can just identify as a clergy person in recovery. I say I'm a pastor and I'm in recovery from addiction. But the big part is, it had to be like, what is your message?
Mm-hmm.
And my message is that spirituality is one component of recovery. And
Yeah.
I am very passionate in exploring this on the channel, because I see this monolithic take on recovery, where spirituality is the only
Right, right.
way. Like, God, God, God. You're
Yes.
gonna come into the room, you're gonna see God up on the wall, and you're gonna hate it for a while, but then that's gonna be the only thing. And
Right.
there's a noisy minority pushing that.
Yes.
And what I want is, it's a place where anyone can experience YouTube. You can just be watching it. You don't have to worry about anyone, seeing you there. And if you want to explore, ideologies, it's
Yeah.
a safe place to do that. So I thought I would just let people know, if you're thinking about quitting drinking, or you're struggling in your early recovery, or you're maybe been in recovery for a while and you've got some hangups on spirituality or other things, there's more. There's like, sure, spirituality is part of it, but there's also doctors, which are a part, like medical
Yeah.
doctors, counselors, peer support workers.
Yeah.
There's, psychiatrists,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
And
So
even to help people understand, like if you're going to go to find a treatment center, what to look for, what kind of treatment center you're
absolutely.
going to go to.
Yeah. I've spent a lot of time with people through the grapevine. They'll say, well, we know Seth and he's in recovery. And so I'll end up going to coffee with family members I've had this conversation over and over again for 11 years because I am an
Mm-hmm.
extrovert and
Mm-hmm.
because I have a network of people. So someone with a relative that they're struggling with, I've had numerous conversations at the coffee shop, and it always comes down to balance. Well,
Yeah.
get them in to see a doctor, get them in to see a psychiatrist, start researching treatment centers, and these are the things that you need to look for, and
Mm-hmm.
these are the things you need to be aware of.
Mm-hmm.
And it I have that common sense because I've worked in two treatment centers, I've worked in sober living,
Mm-hmm.
and I've stayed very connected in the service structure of AA to
Mm-hmm.
understand what's going on.
Sure.
And so I just think that it's valuable information, but the other part is I want it to definitely be a dialogue for a place where I can learn too.
Yeah, yeah. That's the thing I've learned. My experience with the podcast is that it has been just as good for me as it has been for anybody who listens to this.
Hmm.
Because first of all, all the stories of the people that I've talked to over the years are in my head. They're in my heart. I remember these people and their stories, and I've learned something from every single one of them. And I've had the opportunity to speak with people like you that I might not have had an opportunity to speak with before. And it just brings something additional into my life and my thought process that I find, really helpful. So, yeah, it's just, and also I love doing it. That's the
Hmm.
thing. I've zeroed in on that. If I'm going to do anything to help people in recovery, it's got to be something I'm passionate about doing, you know?
Absolutely.
Because there are some things that I got involved with that I just really wasn't passionate about, and I had to learn to kind of let those things go and really focus in on what I am truly passionate about. And for me, that is now the podcast, but also getting involved with the greater recovery community in my area.
Hmm.
And I don't mean just in one particular recovery community, but people in recovery who
Hmm.
are advocating for people in recovery in my state
Absolutely.
is what I want to kind of get involved with. So that's what I'm interested in now.
Yeah, definitely. And greater advocacy is certainly needed right now. I think that um, there is there's a lot of information out there, but there are steps that need to be taken that people don't even understand really.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
And now with COVID
Oh
and
yeah.
with more people being kind of trapped inside,
Yeah.
we have this problem of addiction going up, and yet it is now if people have the internet, they can actually find resources easier. They can get to more resources now online than they would be if they were just in their little community somewhere in a rural area or something. So
Absolutely.
there is something that's happening there.
Hmm.
So it's like this medium is really important during this time that we're
Yeah.
in right now. You know.
It's interesting because uh, I have connected with numerous people that have needed help through Reddit since the beginning. Like that is the crazy thing
You're
about
into
this.
Reddit.
Yes,
Okay.
so I'm into Reddit locally,
Uh-huh.
um, and on that local level, I've been able to connect with some people that just by being an advocate for recovery, I get people commenting on my thread asking for help, DMing me asking for help, and then there's just all these various Reddit recovery threads that are
Yeah.
out there with various rules. Some of them operate like a support group.
Right.
Some of them are just open forum, and through that, people have been engaging with my channel. They've been,
Yeah.
um, you know, asking me
Reddit is
questions.
huge. I need to get involved in it.
Hmm.
I like Reddit. I was at one time what I was doing. I didn't really understand what Reddit was. I was kind of thinking of it as like Twitter. where you
Oh
just
yeah.
put crap out there, right?
Hmm.
And so that's what I was doing. I was just putting crap out there. Every time I post a podcast, I'd post a link to the podcast on my little Reddit channel.
Yeah.
Well, then Reddit contacted me and says, no, don't do that.
No.
Don't do
No.
that. This is supposed to be a place where you actually talk with people, interact with people. You
Mhm.
know, it's not just a place to post your podcast. So it was, so I realized, okay, so if I'm going to do Reddit, I really am going to have to take some time to, you know, cultivate a community. And
Yeah.
I just didn't have time to, but there's our communities that already exist out there that all I have to do is join and be
Yeah.
in the conversation.
And it takes some time to get going
Yeah.
really. I
Yeah.
think that and then it takes restraint to know when the limit is, I think,
Mm-hmm.
too, because it's good to have connections, but I think that for myself, I know that me making YouTube videos is something that I do because I enjoy it and because I believe that the purpose is something that is fulfilling and useful. And
It'll reach people. It'll
yeah.
definitely reach people. I was going to
Mhm.
ask you, when you do
Sure.
that first part of your video, is
Yeah.
that okay? Is that part just totally extemporaneous, and then do you kind of kick back for a while and think about what you said and do the analysis part of it, or
So
is it?
yeah, what I do is I want the first minute where I'm under a time limit, like I'm working off, I've got either just a standing list of things and of topics, and I'm just going to pick one and I'm going to go and do that today because I think it's relevant and or I got a good feeling about it. And
Mm-hmm.
then with no preparation, I speak for 1 minute on it.
Okay.
And when the timer goes, then the timer goes. Then afterwards, my evaluation, I spend some time of really evaluating and taking notes on what I just said, reflecting on what I said, evaluating what I said, and then I launch into it. But I still want to do that in one take.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't want to. I don't want to do too many takes.
Oh no, I wouldn't either.
No, I do want there to be a little bit of a raw
Yeah.
sharing and speaking vibe to it as well.
Yeah. And
Definitely.
there's only so much time in a day.
And a video that's coming up soon that I just did a video. Someone asked me about using marijuana and being an AA,
Oh.
and I'm so passionate about this
So
that
tell me how'd that go?
yeah. So yeah, my take on it is absolutely
It's
no
okay.
way.
No,
No.
no way. No.
For
Okay.
me,
I don't
I
know which
can't
way
do.
you're going to go.
For me,
Yeah.
I have a dual diagnosis,
Yeah.
and so I spoke for myself. I said I have bipolar disorder, and I've been in the psych ward too many times because I've used marijuana, and I didn't endorse it, but uh, what I did was I spoke about the dangers, and I
Yeah.
presented some facts from Health Canada's website about psychosis.
Well, there is some science behind this
There
too.
is definitely.
And I'm like on your side. I'm saying, okay, for me, no, no, no. I'm not,
Mhm,
no, no, not for me. And I
mhm.
was not a marijuana user. But the
Yeah.
thing about it is it causes just as dramatic a spike in your what is that, dopamine,
Yes.
as alcohol does. And
Yes.
it's the dopamine that I'm really addicted to. It's that spike
Mhm.
in the dopamine that I'm addicted to, not necessarily the booze, you
Yeah.
know. It's what the booze does to in my brain. And
Yeah.
marijuana would do the same thing.
Yes.
Or some other drug would too.
Hmm. And there is hard science about if you have a pre-existing mental health condition or you are too young, you are susceptible to psychosis, and prolonged use and heavy usage can cause psychosis in
Hmm.
individuals. And we are too early on in the investigatory process of looking at the therapeutic benefits of CBD
Yeah.
or marijuana to treat certain things that I cannot say
Yeah. I
I
agree.
endorse it.
But you know
It
what's interesting about AA though? Um,
yes.
if you're really kind of totally dogmatic about AA,
Hmm.
it's perfectly fine to smoke dope and shoot heroin and whatever else you want to do, as long as you don't drink, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Now it's different with NA. NA says that alcohol's a drug too.
Yes.
So it sees alcohol, marijuana, everything
Uh-huh.
all as encompassing. But in AA, theoretically, you can
Yes.
smoke pot if it's not a problem for you and consider yourself sober. And there are people who do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is another part of how I have to approach the public presence on my channel. I have to be able to speak to a broad group of people
Yeah.
with perspectives. And I think when we're talking about recovery, and again, coming back to what I said when I sent you that email, just like how I talk to people when we're talking about different systems of belief in terms
Mm-hmm.
of religion or rationality slash atheism slash agnosticism, there I say there's many ways up the mountain. And in recovery, I think that's another thing that I want to always tell people that's important to me is there's many ways up the mountain of recovery. Everyone's
Mm-hmm.
going to have a different story, and we should never ever feel like we have to kick someone out of a room because of their practices.
Yeah. Yeah.
As long as they're good intentioned and they're not abusive, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. One thing that I've learned is you got to kind of meet people where they are. And it doesn't
Absolutely.
really do any good to just go around judging people and
Mhm.
wagging your finger at them and all of that. So,
Mhm.
so where do you think you want to go with this, this YouTube thing? And where you want to go with your life in general? Where do you see yourself going with your passion for helping people in recovery?
So, right now, my wife and I have been living where we are in Kingston, Ontario for about a year and a
Mm-hmm.
half. And I have a fulfilling vocation and career. And I'm going to continue with this as far as it needs to go. There's a lot of really progressive things that are happening in the church that I'm serving, and they're very progressive, socially minded people. And I think um, right now, I'm working on securing funding locally to have a social worker work out of our church on a contract basis. We have some funding secured. I've worked with advocates locally with banning conversion therapy nationally.
Oh,
So
interesting.
I've worked with a lot of LGBTQ IA plus individuals
It's
in
hard to
the
believe that
area.
even happens still, but I guess it does.
It was a huge issue here, and I was all over the news here because there was one particular congregation that it was happening in, and I got in touch with some of the survivors, and we went to city council and we got a municipal ban here.
Oh,
And so now nationally, it's going to be completely outlawed
oh wow.
in Canada. This bill is before our parliament here. So that's something that I in my profession I'm looking at doing,
Mm-hmm.
and still producing videos every week about addiction recovery and spirituality,
Awesome.
and reaching out my hand to atheists, agnostics, and people of multi-faith. One of the people that my colleagues here in town that I see most eye to eye with is the rabbi. She's down the street from me, and like continuing to work in a collective, community minded kind of atmosphere here in this. And I'm right on a major university campus here, so
Mm-hmm.
continuing to work with young students, and until my time here
Yeah.
it comes to an end. And then after that, my wife and I are open to maybe moving to a major metropolitan area in the United States, or to overseas to
Mm-hmm.
somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
possibly working for a non-governmental organization,
Mm-hmm.
and just continuing to do this public work and have a public presence, and create videos weekly, just as this outlet to express really who
Cool.
I am. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to follow your channel. I'm really really glad that you contacted me.
Yeah.
I don't know what you thought. You thought that maybe we might not want to talk to you, but no, we do. I don't want people. I don't think that we should be in silos and just and just talking with people who are just exactly like us.
Mhm.
The value in there's strength in diversity.
Yeah.
So if I know you and I meet somebody who is receptive to your message, I'm gonna say, hey, check out Seth's YouTube channel.
Yeah, and I'm going to meet people that are going to be the exact opposite. I'm going to run
Right.
into people. I don't know how many people need an outlet for rational thought, for
Yeah.
to be atheists, or just people who are undecided that need to do research.
Yeah.
And that's something that is important. People should come into the room to be able to be, encouraged to go out and just educate yourself.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
agree. Well, thank you so much for your email, and thank you for appearing on the podcast. So we're going to do something different here. I'm going to post this video for everybody in the world to see on our YouTube channel, but we're also going to have a nice edited audio version out as well for you to download wherever you get your podcast. So with that, that is it. That's another episode of AA Beyond Belief. Thank you so much for listening. As I said, we're going to have a different name by the time you listen to this, probably. If you'd like to support our website and podcast, you can do that through a bunch of different ways. Go buy us a coffee. You can go to our podcast.aabeyondbelief.org website and donate there. And if you don't have any money to donate, that's okay too. We're going to do this anyway. Thanks again. And thank you, Seth. It was really nice to talk with you.
Thank you.
Okay. There we go. Good deal. Well, thank you so much.